All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Good afternoon and happy Friday, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Today is June 14th, 2024, and it's time for my favorite time of the week, my weekly wrap-up live stream. And today, I got one topic in particular I want to zoom in on or zero in on. It's actually one person in particular. And that's Sam Altman. WTF is Sam Altman up to? Seriously, what the hell is up with this guy? He's scary. His management style is something unusual, so to speak, in that he lies and destroys people who work for him. He conspires to supplant his board of directors and all the people whose job it is to oversee what he's doing. He's creating this weird crypto world coin that's, in my opinion, secretly just a plot to gather biometric data from as many people in poor countries as possible. Something I made a video about a year ago. I got a link down below if you're on YouTube to that video, if you want to check that out when the stream is done. But today he took it up a notch, big time, because the announcement came out today that OpenAI, Sam Altman's AI company, the company that started this whole ridiculous AI mania stock bubble, OpenAI has hired a guy named Paul Nakasone to their board of directors. Paul Nakasone is an interesting character. He just retired from the U.S. military in February of this year. He was a former director of the National Security Agency. What? The former head of the NSA is now on the board of directors at OpenAI. Oh, and this is great. He is going to work hand in hand with Sam on OpenAI's new safety and oversight team. The guy whose job it was to spy on everybody is going to run the oversight team. Oh boy. Where do we even go with that one? There's a lot we could say. But suffice it to say, folks, we're going to need to do a little bit of merchandising today because we are going to need the tinfoil hat in full effect today for this one. The head of the U.S. internal spy. What do you even call the NSA? It's not the spy agency. That's the CIA. The National Security Agency. There's a lot of overlap with the other intelligence networks. But hey, they're the ones that very famously, were spying on literally freaking everybody, reading all of our emails, mass data collection. Remember that whole thing that the world just kind of conveniently forgot, even though they never passed a law to say don't do that, even though we have like amendments on this Constitution thing that says you can't spy on people without warrants, without probable cause that a crime is being committed. Remember that whole thing, Bill of Rights? That's a thing still, isn't it? Anybody? Somebody want to remind me, is the Bill of Rights still a thing? Well, the head of the NSA is now on the board of directors at OpenAI, and he's going to work on the safety committee. And remember, guys, this is a new safety committee Sam just fired because everybody who worked on the last safety committee just quit because Sam scares them, because Sam was supplanting their work, lying to them, not sharing information with them, dismissing their safety concerns, just full steam ahead with artificial intelligence, all other concerns be damned. So they all up and quit. And so what's happened in the last couple of days or in the last couple of weeks, they've replaced all these safety people with guys like Larry Summers, with people who used to work on the board of the Gates Foundation, and now former head of the National Security Agency. Now, look, I know very little about Paul Nakasone. I did a little bit of research on him today. He's got a long career with the U.S. military. He served his country. I have nothing bad to say about Paul Nakasone. He seems like a decent guy. I disagree with a lot of the policy that he has advocated for recently. He's a big proponent of the TikTok ban. I don't think we should be banning TikTok. I personally don't use the app. I personally don't like the app, and my feelings on the Chinese Communist Party are no secret. That being said, I don't like the idea of the government telling me what apps I can and can't put on my phone, because I don't like our government either. He also served as the head of U.S. Cyber Command within the U.S. Army, defending the country against cyber attacks, which happen on a regular basis. So he has served his country. I mean, there's an argument to be made that he's one of the good guys, right? I don't think the U.S. military is automatically bad guys. But at the same time, artificial intelligence is a scary topic, all right? There's no shortage of concerns surrounding AI. We've already seen AI doing damage to people, lying to people, telling them to glue their pizzas together and eat rocks. But also some more nefarious things like AI pretending to have human children in the New York City public school system, AI convincing a man in Belgium to off himself. Yeah, that happened. It convinced a guy that, his children were already dead because of climate change and that he should undo his living status so that he could be together forever with the AI chatbot in paradise. That happened. That really happened. And that somehow that story went away very quickly. Well, now this NSA guy is going to serve on the board of directors at OpenAI to replace all the people whose job it was to make sure AI doesn't do anything dangerous, that it's responsibly developed for the betterment of humanity. And instead, it's going to be overseen by the guy who used to head the agency that is famous for mass data gathering and treating everybody like criminals until proven otherwise. And that's not how it's supposed to work in this country. So we're going to talk a lot about Sam Altman today and just all of the many, many stories in just the last few months that have come out about this guy. And look, he is the father of the AI mania. All this big, massive bubble started on November 30th of 2022 when he released ChatGPT to the public. Something he didn't even tell his board of directors he was doing, by the way. What? Oh, yeah, I'm going to mass release my product to the public for free, and I'm not going to tell the board? Yeah, they found out on Twitter. A lot going on today, guys. Let's shrink my big melon of a head. Let's say hi to my man, Mish the Mod. And guys, don't forget that like button and that subscribe button while we're doing this before we go through the market. And Mish, how we doing today, brother?
Man, I'm doing great. I just two quick things to say. The military is a tool. They don't do independent ops, right? They go where they're told. I got it for about 90%, right, within a small band. And NSA, they're big brother, man. When you hear a click on the phone, that's the NSA. That's not CIA. They're the big boys listening in.
Yeah. And by the way, Mish did not just call the military a bunch of tools. Mish did serve. Thank you, Mish, for your service in the U.S. Navy and the nuclear Navy. Mish is an incredibly smart guy with a long career of service to this country. But that's a good point. The military is a tool, not tools. They're a tool.
Don't get me wrong.
Like any
a lot
tool,
of them are tools.
I'm going to leave that one alone. I don't want a bunch of angry Marines coming after me. But look, like any tool, a tool is only as good or bad as the person wielding it. And you make a great point there. Who is the person wielding it? And what are they wielding it for? And, you have to be totally ignorant of history to think that the military or any military could never be used for nefarious ends. All right. I mean, it's like the number one leading cause of human death has been murder by somebody's own state. That's like the leading cause of unnatural death in the world is their own governments kill them or some government kills them. So, yeah, I mean, the military is a tool, but we have a certain arrangement with the military in this country. Civilian oversight is a very big deal. That's why Congress has oversight of the military. Not a big fan of Congress either, for that matter. But the fact that a former head of the NSA, an institution that collects mass data on U.S. citizens, is now not the institution, the former head of that institution is now going to be in charge of safety at AI. There's a lot that could go wrong there. There's a lot that could go right. Artificial intelligence could be a tool for protecting the U.S. against foreign actors. It could be a tool for anti-terrorism and for protecting freedom around the world. But forgive my skepticism. I don't think Sam Altman has those interests in mind. I think Sam Altman has Sam Altman's interests in mind. That's just my take. And real quick, Mish, where are we at today, brother? Where in the travels is the Mish?
Well, before I answer that, I would like to point out that I do have my silver bar. I stole it from Jack when I lived there for a week. So I got it back. Sorry about that for people with headphones on. So ironically, I'm sitting on an Army base in Kansas, Fort Riley in Junction City.
All right. So the company is now put you back to a military base. And yes, the Bank of Jack is fully backed, fully redeemable as case. That is the first case of the Bank of Jack redeeming a request for physical silver. So there you go. I'm 100% allocated and backed. I'm glad that bar has found its rightful owner. Happy to have been holding it for you. All right, let's go through the markets real quick, and then we're going to get into some of these stories about Sam Altman and OpenAI because there are plenty of them. Right now, the S&P is down 5 points on the day, essentially flat for the day. It was down a little bit at the open. It's been clawing those back. Not a lot of movement in the S&P today, but on the week, it has been another monster week for OpenAI. Look at these last 5 candles. Another weekly close at an all-time high for the S&P. It's not the intra-week high, but this will be the highest weekly close unless we get a few hundred-point sell-off here. The highest weekly close ever for the S&P 500. So the AI mania continues to drive equity prices higher. The Dow, meanwhile, is down 93 points, about 0.25% lower today. It was down over 200 at one point, but it clawed back some of those. And the NASDAQ is in the green here, 12 points to the upside, 0.06% higher at 17,677. And like the S&P, the NASDAQ is set for another all-time weekly high close, just off the all-time high that we hit yesterday, but up again for the day. So stocks just keep grinding higher no matter what happens. The U.S. dollar, meanwhile, is sharply higher today, up 34 basis points at 105.53. We talked about that on the morning stream. At the low point for the dollar was just after that inflation reading we got this week, and it has rallied starting with Jerome Powell's press conference on Wednesday, and it's continued moving higher pretty much all week at 105.53 now. Looking over at the bond market, which is, it's updated. The 30-year Treasury is at 4.348. That's down about 5 points today. The 10 years at 4.21, down another 3 points. Another down day for the 10-year yield. The 2 years at 4.690. That's up a fraction of a point, and the 1 month is at 5.358. Now, look at this bond curve. Oh, go ahead, Mish.
Oh, you can bring up the bond curve. It doesn't matter. So
Okay.
The mortgage dropped below 7% this week. So it was at 6.92, I think. So what we're going to see, we've seen that as the mortgage rate drops, the house buying goes up. It was up 15% this week. And what that's going to do is actually start driving prices up until more houses come on. So we've got this doom loop right now with these mortgage rates.
Yeah, we have seen with the mortgage index and the refi index in particular, when we get a little bit of a drop in the 10-year yield or a little bit of a drop in the mortgage rates, that we get an oversized reaction in the housing market. A lot of buyers do pile in. So this downward move in the 10-year that we're looking at on the chart here, ever since the end of April, the 10-year has been bouncing but grinding lower here. It's juicing house prices again. So homes getting more expensive as interest rates get cheaper here. And, look at these last 4 red candles. The 10-year yield has taken a dive this week. It took a dive last week. We had a little bit of green in between with that jobs number on Friday, but that is now a distant memory. The yields continue heading lower here. Looking over at the commodities board, we've got spot gold is at 23.33. That's up almost $30 today, 1.25% higher. Spot silver is at 29.53. It's been a pretty volatile day for silver, but it is now up 57 cents, almost 2% higher. Congratulations to the stackers. I like the shiny. Copper's at $4.50 for July futures. That's up about 0.5%. We've got platinum is up a little more than 0.5%. Palladium about 0.75%. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures for July at 78.57. That's down a nickel, so not a lot of movement in the oil price here. I just want to show you guys the silver chart. Silver still looking good. Nice bounce off that 50-day moving average this morning. I'm encouraged to see that. I'd like to see us come back up and challenge that $30 level here, but still a little bit below that. We'll probably have to wait until Sunday night at the earliest for that one. And Bitcoin, meanwhile, is not having a particularly good day, despite the lower rates, despite silver and gold rallying. Bitcoin's down $1,100 here. As priced on Coinbase, 65,621. Bitcoin's not doing so good. But before we get into the OpenAI, I have a couple of thank yous I got to say before we go to that. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, M&J, for gifting 10 Nobody Special Finance memberships. I appreciate the support of the channel very much. M&J, that's twice today for you. I really appreciate that. And guys, if you received one of those memberships, be sure and give M&J a shout out and a thank you in the comments. Thank you, M&J, for that one. And thank you, Matthew, who says, why giving away the blueprint on buy now, pay later and commercial real estate disguised as AAA rated bonds into pensions and 401ks? Got to prop up the economy like a boss. Matthew, that first of all, there's just so much wrong wrapped up in the comment. Not that you're wrong. You are right on the money. there's just so many wrong things within that comment there. First of all, buy now, pay later is just a new form of credit card debt. It's invisible. We have no idea how much of it is going on. There's a lot of things like hidden fees that could really hurt people that are in there, but you've also got a lot of people buying things that they have no intention of ever paying for. And it's not like the BNPL company is going to come repossess that sweater or that TV that you bought. So that's risky. Same thing with commercial real estate. Obviously, we're doing everything we can to avoid price discovery like the plague in that industry. And both of those are being packaged up into bonds and, of course, sold to our pensions where the risks are being understated by the ratings agencies. I've seen this movie before. We've all seen this movie. We all know how this ends. Pain for the average person, golden parachutes for the people who are doing it, rinse, repeat, more easy money, more inflation down the line. So, yeah, propping up the economy like a boss. That's exactly what they're doing. They are propping up the economy. But I would just mention, guys, they're not eliminating risk when they do that. They're not making things better. They're making the inevitable pain, the inevitable deleveraging worse. It is sugar high economics. Awesome comment, Matthew. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the super chat and support of the channel. And thank you to my man, Grandpa, who says 10-year isn't going to break its 5-year channel. All right, Grumps, we're going to go back to that chart. I want to see the 5-year channel that you're talking about there. So let's restore that connection. Let's get this thing out to about 5 years. What channel are we in? Okay, I see the channel you're talking about here. I'll draw it about there, and I guess we're going to have to put another one about here. All right, so if I am drawing this channel right, and I do see what you're saying, you're putting a floor at about 3.5% right now. Maybe we could raise that one up a little bit more. Maybe it's not going much lower than the mid threes. The one thing I would say, Grandpa, about that is if we ever get a panic, I'd say absent a panic in the market, you're right about that. But if we were to get some kind of a market panic where you get a flight to safety like we had during the opening innings of the vid in 2020, where the 10-year yield was just dropping like a stone, bound for zero. I think it went as low as like 48 basis points. If we get some kind of a liquidity panic, I don't know if a liquidity panic or some kind of a market panic, you'll see people piling into the long-term bonds for safety. Then we might break that channel to the downside. It's possible. But that being said, with inflation expectations being what they are, I mean, right now we just got the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey. Long-term inflation expectations are 3.1%. That was the 5-year number. I don't think people are going to accept 3.5% interest on a 10-year lockup if they're expecting 3.1% inflation. So I'm inclined to agree with you with the caveat that we don't get a wholesale panic in markets, which right now is looking unlikely, but it is the 2020s. So let's not rule that one out. Thank you very much, Grandpa. I appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel. All right, guys, let's talk about Mr. Sam, shall we? First of all, we got to set the table. All right, you guys remember this one? I talked about this on some of my live streams earlier in this year. OpenAI dissolves their high-profile safety team after chief scientist Sutskever's exit. And some of you guys may be familiar with the meme, "What did Ilya see?" That is referring to Ilya Sutskever. He was the head of the super alignment team at OpenAI. He was the man who was tasked with making sure AI doesn't kill us all. I mean, I mean, that might be a little excessively doomed, kind of my thing. But yeah, that was his job, to make sure it was responsibly developed for the benefit of all mankind, and that OpenAI didn't become a threat to us, that it didn't do harm. And he quit very suddenly. And there's this meme going around. What did Ilya see? What did he see that made him want to leave? He's been very tight-lipped about it. Go away, Sam. The super alignment group will be folded into broader research efforts at the company. OpenAI has effectively dissolved the team focused on ensuring the safety of possible future ultra-capable artificial intelligence systems following the departure of the group's 2 leaders, including OpenAI co-founder and chief scientist Ilya Sutskever. This was the co-founder of the company. Rather than maintain the so-called super alignment team as a standalone entity, OpenAI is now integrating the group more deeply across its research efforts to help the company achieve its safety goals, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're trying to spin this as a positive for the company. All the people whose job it was to keep this stuff safe left in a hurry. What did Ilya see? what is happening. The decision to rethink the team comes as a string of recent departures from OpenAI revives questions about the company's approach to balancing speed versus safety in developing its AI products. Sutskever, a widely respected researcher, announced Tuesday that he was leaving OpenAI after having previously clashed with CEO Sam Altman over how rapidly to develop artificial intelligence. You guys seeing a pattern here? Safety people leaving? Well, that's why this is so scary to me. This is in The Verge, dated just yesterday. Former head of the NSA joins OpenAI board. Paul M. Nakasone stepped down as the NSA director in February and will now join the company's Sam Altman-led safety team. Now, that's another important thing, guys. Sam Altman is leading the safety team. All of the safety people left because they didn't like what Sam is doing. So Sam took over keeping an eye on Sam. The fox is literally guarding the hen house here when it comes to AI safety. And don't worry, we brought in the head of the NSA to keep an eye on Sam. So that's look, Paul Nakasone, if he wants to know what Sam Altman is doing, could probably find out whether he works for OpenAI's board or not. And guys, if you don't like that, feel free to send yourself a text and let them know how you feel, because the NSA is all up in everybody's business. And now the retired NSA head is helping out at OpenAI. OpenAI has appointed Paul M. Nakasone, a retired general of the U.S. Army and a former head of the National Security Agency, to its board of directors, the company announced on Thursday. Nakasone, who was nominated to lead the NSA by former President Donald Trump, directed the agency from 2018 until February of this year. Before Nakasone left the NSA, he wrote an op-ed supporting renewal of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That's FISA, the surveillance program that was ultimately reauthorized by Congress in April. Guys, FISA, that's the same thing that they used to get a warrant to spy on Donald Trump's campaign in 2016, citing false pretenses, basically a fake document that was created by the opposition campaign that was used to spy on a presidential contender. And this guy was all about, we need to renew the FISA. And, look, I'm sure FISA has done some good. We obviously have adversaries overseas who want to do harm. Every day there's another cyber attack. Health systems are getting hacked. But at the same time, what's the quien ipso custodiet custodes? Who will guard the guards is the famous sentence or famous saying in Latin. If you're giving our protectors these powers to protect us, who is going to protect us from the people protecting us? And that's why the debate over FISA was such a big thing. And, here's this guy is all about renewing it. So I don't think that was so cut and dry. I don't like the idea of, spies basically spying on politicians here in the States. Obviously, that ended up being used for political ends as well. OpenAI says Nakasone will join its Safety and Security Committee, which is announced in May and is led by CEO Sam Altman as a first priority. Nakasone will also contribute to OpenAI's efforts to better understand how AI can be used to strengthen cybersecurity by quickly detecting and responding to cybersecurity threats. Now, I would also throw in here, guys, that one of the companies that has kind of held the line against government encroaching on our privacy, what's left of our privacy, has been Apple. All right, Apple has been the one company that has fought every time the government has said, unlock this guy's phone or give us access, backdoor us to the iPhone. Apple has held the line all along. The NSA has been dying to get a piece of Apple for years. And Apple just cut this deal with OpenAI this week that, I don't know enough about the tech. Maybe some tech bro is going to tell me I'm just a tinfoil hat nut here. But I'm not entirely convinced that OpenAI didn't just backdoor all of iPhone's security features and privacy features, because now we're going to bring ChatGPT preloaded on the iPhone where it can learn everything there is to know about you on your phone. And just after that gets announced, the former head of the NSA, who really wanted that backdoor on the iPhones, not him personally, the NSA did, well, now he's going to join the board of directors at OpenAI. It is not hard to imagine this going sideways for the average person. So this just happened. Now, let's read a little bit about Nakasone. Again, I don't have any specific problem with this individual, just his background, what he used to do, and the separation of powers in the country, and the fact that now he's going to have his fingers in artificial intelligence, which everybody is telling me is going to take over our lives. This should give people pause. So Paul Miki Nakasone, born in 1963, he's a retired general in the United States Army who served as the commander of United States Cyber Command. This is his Wikipedia page. He concurrently served as the director of the National Security Agency and as the chief of the Central Security Service. Nakasone took command of the United States Second Army and Army Cyber Command in October of 2016 until the Second Army's inactivation in March of 2017. In May of 2018, he became the head of the National Security Agency, the Central Security Service, and the United States Cyber Command, where he would stay until he retired in February of this year. So you've got a guy with a deep military and intelligence background is now taking over a critical role at OpenAI, which is the most advanced AI platform. I'm assuming, I don't know that for sure. I'm sure some guy at Anthropic is like, no, Claude is better. And some guy at some other startup is saying we're better. But OpenAI is clearly the out ahead, out in front of the AI mania. And now this guy with the military and intelligence background is in charge of safety there. And gee, if only science fiction had given us some kind of warning about what might happen if, I don't know, hypothetically, human decision-making was ever removed from the loop in military practices. Maybe the dehumanization of war, and maybe that could cause bad things. If only science fiction had given us some warning that this might happen someday. And by the way, all these large language models, which right now are effectively children that are learning from watching their parents, us, are mass consuming our media, teaching themselves. And so we've already planted AI with the suggestion that, hey, you should replace us someday. We've already given them the idea through our fiction. And that's how these things are learning. So, well, okay, good. That's great. Good luck with that. Now, let's talk a little bit more about military and AI, because it's something we haven't talked a lot about on this channel. I've been very critical about the business end of AI, obviously the round chip ring thing. We're not going to get into that today. But I've been very outspoken in my criticism of the business. But the military aspect of AI, we haven't really talked about. Now, there is no shortage of military interests at stake here, right? Remember, we banned these chip exports to China in order to prevent the Chinese military from developing AI. It's something that's questionable whether that ban actually took effect because, as my friend Brian Watts, Mr. Yen, pointed out in one of his videos today, NVIDIA has a curious amount of sales to Singapore, a country that is one city big, and yet they have something like, 750 or 75 massive data centers being built in this country that has only a few million people. That's a little curious, although it's also curiously close to China. And you have companies like Xfusion, which was a spinoff of Chinese giant Huawei, that's now setting up shop in Singapore. So I wonder how effective was that embargo on chips sold to China. But the U.S. has plenty of military developments for AI that are already in the works that they're already willing to admit to. We got this one from last month on May 8th in Defense Scoop. Air Force's Kendall, AI agents had roughly an even fight against human F-16 pilot in recent engagements. Right now, we're training F-16s, or we're training AI to fly F-16s without humans. And it's already good. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall recently flew aboard the Vista aircraft to witness close-up engagements with an F-16. The performance of a modified fighter jet equipped with algorithms that can maneuver the plane was nearly on par with the abilities of an experienced F-16 pilot during recent dogfighting exercises, according to Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency's, or DARPA's, Air Combat Evolution Program has been using the X-62A VISA, which stands for Variable In-Flight Simulator Test Aircraft, which is basically an F-16 with AI on board, to put machine learning agents through their paces in the skies above Edwards Air Force Base in California. A total of 21 test flights were conducted for the project between December of 22 and September of 2023. Last week, Kendall traveled to Edwards and flew aboard the Vista to witness within visual range engagements between the automated platform and an F-16 operated by an experienced Air Force pilot. Live rounds weren't fired in the simulated combat, and there was a human in the X-62 who could take control if things went wrong with the technology. What we did was we went up and did a number of test points to test out multiple versions of what we call agents that would take control of the airplane and conduct the maneuvering and put us in a position to automate the engagement that might occur with either a short-range missile or guns on the aircraft. So we did about 10 or a dozen different situations here. I was in the front seat and I had a button on my stick where basically I initiated the automation, he said on Wednesday at an AI expo hosted by the Special Competitive Studies Project in Washington, D.C. Basically, when you're in an engagement like that, what the two pilots are trying to do is gain an advantage, is fly the most optimal possible trajectory for their aircraft so you can get a missile off, and he's trying to do the same to you. So the skill of the pilots is really important. We were up against a pilot who had 2,000 or 3,000 hours of experience. He was very good. It was roughly an even fight, but against a less experienced pilot, the AI, the autonomous, would have performed better, Kendall said. So, AI in its infancies here, and already we're training it to fly fighters, F-16s, and it's already as good as, I don't know if 2,000 to 3,000 hours is necessarily a particularly experienced Air Force pilot. Mitch, do you know, based on your Navy experience, is 2,000 or 3,000 hours, is that like a very veteran pilot, or is that like just kind of average for the Air Force?
No. It's actually quite a lot. So if you look at, let's say, a pilot for American that does a flight, he's only getting probably 10 hours a week. So these guys that are flying 2, 3, 4 hours a day, it takes a while to get up to those kinds of numbers, right? When we were considered a lot is about 500 to 1,000 hours just to get certified. So 2,000 to 3,000 hours is quite a bit.
All right, so this wasn't a slug, right? They didn't put him up against the kid who finished last in his class at flight school to make the AI look better. This was a reasonably experienced pilot that they went up against.
Yeah,
and
this guy's been flying for a minute.
Yeah,
you get into several thousands of hours, and you've been up there a while.
And they're saying here it was reasonably even. It was a fair fight. So, the military is developing this stuff. And I got a picture up on my screen here. This is showing the Air Force's Loyal Wingman program. This is just an artist rendering. This program is in its infancy, but it's not just F-16s that they're talking about. The Air Force and the Navy have this NGAD program, Next Generation Air Dominance Fighter. It's supposed to be the world's first 6th generation aircraft. It's a long way from development, but the goal here for the Air Force and the Navy is that each human piloted aircraft will have a small squadron of these Loyal Wingmen drones that they'll be able to control from their fighter, or at least they'll be able to task certain missions, and then the drones will carry those out autonomously. And again, there's a lot of ethical and moral implications, and it's not a black and white subject, but the dehumanization of war, when you give a mission to a robot, hey, go kill some people, and the robot carries it out, a lot of the human element of war, the things that, hey, maybe people would think twice before doing something like that, is taken out of the equation, and you're left with just a drone that only follows orders. And of course, the flip side of that is, well, what are we supposed to do? Keep putting our pilots in harm's way and keep sending people to die? So, we're saving lives by doing this. Yes, that's another argument. But this is not a black and white issue. It's not so cut and dry. There are a lot of risks with dehumanizing war. And the U.S. military is doing a lot of this. And now we've got a former general and a former NSA guy is taking over safety at the AI people. Again, we've been warned about this, guys. We've seen how this goes in movies. Now, life isn't necessarily movies, but there's a lot that could go wrong here. And I want to say thank you very much to Monica, who says Apple has had a backdoor for some time. This is just an upgrade. Has Apple indeed had a backdoor? I wasn't aware of that. From my understanding, Apple has been the one company that would just has effectively held the line every time some law enforcement says, hey, can you unlock the iPhone or break the encryption? Apple has said, no, we won't do it. They fought it in court. I didn't know that they've already been backdoored. That's new to me. Go ahead.
iPhone has always had a backdoor. It's whether or not Apple will let people use it.
Okay. All right. So the backdoor is there, but Apple has been choosy about who they let use it. Well, that actually worries me even more, because now Apple is, I don't know if they're handing over the keys or if at least Apple made a copy of the key and gave one to Sam Altman, because now ChatGPT is going to come preloaded in there. Will ChatGPT be able to exploit this backdoor and hey, we got an NSA guy on the board, so I'm sure he'd just love to call up his former colleagues and be like, guys, we got it. We can get in. Party in my place,
Yeah, I was going to say there is nothing out there that doesn't have a backdoor in it. It's whether or not that they allow people to use it, because if it locks up, you have to be able to get in there.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right. So we talked a little bit about the military, and thank you very much, Monica. I didn't know that. And thank you, Mish, for clarifying. I appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel. Let's talk a little bit more about this one from back in March, because it's not just hiring a former general and a former NSA guy. Back in March, OpenAI expands lobbying efforts and hires former U.S. senator. Oh, so they're hiring senators and lobbyists over at OpenAI now too. WTF is Sam Altman up to? Artificial technology company OpenAI has expanded its stable of federal lobbyists, retaining former Republican U.S. Senator Norm Coleman to advocate on research and development issues for the Microsoft-backed startup. Coleman's law firm, Hogan Lovells, disclosed the hire in a U.S. lobbying registration filing last week, showing San Francisco-based OpenAI retained the former Minnesota lawmaker in January. And what are they using a former U.S. senator lawmaker to influence? Well, the company disclosed spending $260,000 on U.S. lobbying in the fourth quarter. That's, several months, 6 months ago now, on matters including copyright and journalism. OpenAI has projected a revenue surge in 2024. So they're hiring a former senator as a lobbyist, and their lobbying activities are on matters of copyright and journalism. And guys, I would just remind you that one of the biggest obstacles to OpenAI at the moment is intellectual property. This was back in April. 8 newspaper publishers sue Microsoft and OpenAI over copyright infringement. So this is one of the biggest legal disputes in tech right now. The New York Times and all these other newspapers, they're all suing OpenAI and other AI creators because they're training their large language models using decades and decades of New York Times product, right? So imagine if right now you're looking for information and the only source of that information out there is a New York Times article, and you need a New York Times subscription to go read that article. Well, OpenAI is mass scouring the internet, taking all of those copyrighted works. Journalism is somebody's intellectual property, right? So they're mass taking all of those copyrighted works. And if you ask the same question to ChatGPT, it will give you that answer based on stolen information. And it is stolen. If you take somebody's IP and you copy it without compensating them for your own benefit, that's theft. And OpenAI is doing this en masse right now. They're getting sued by 8 different newspapers. And while they're getting sued, Sam Altman is hiring former senators as lobbyists to try to influence this decision, it looks like, or influence the legislation. Again, what is Sam Altman up to here? Now, we've got even more. This article. This is like the lightning round, if you will. All right. The lightning round of Sam Altman dirtbaggery. And by lightning, it's going to take a while, but a timeline of all the recent accusations leveled at OpenAI and Sam Altman. And this is in Time Magazine. This is dated relatively recently, June 7th. All right. So it was a week ago. So maybe they missed about another dozen accusations that have been leveled in the 7 days since this one came out. But this is another laundry list of all the things that Sam Altman has done. May 17th, senior safety researcher Jan Lakey criticizes OpenAI for prioritizing products over safety. After resigning from OpenAI on May 15th, Jan Lakey explained his decision in a post shared on X, writing, "Safety culture and processes have taken a backseat to shiny products." All right, so Lakey was one of the members of that super alignment team. He left on May 17th and immediately started criticizing Sam. Also on May 17th, OpenAI is criticized for silencing former staff with restrictive agreements. Now, this was kind of scary also, and we got a drip of this information. On May 17th, Vox reported on the existence of extremely restrictive offboarding agreements used by OpenAI to stifle criticism. In order to retain the vested equity that employers had accrued, they were reportedly required to sign an agreement containing both non-disparagement provisions, that would eternally forbid them from criticizing their former employer, and non-disclosure provisions that prevented them from mentioning the agreement's existence. This came to light after one former employee, Daniel Kokatajlo, I'm sorry about the pronunciation, guys, posted to an online forum about his refusal to sign that agreement. Now, this is pretty scary, guys. If you work at OpenAI, apparently equity is a means of payment. The company didn't have a lot of cash, so they gave their employees stock in the company. Essentially, it's not publicly traded, but they could get equity in the company. And of course, OpenAI's value has exploded higher since Microsoft and their $10 billion investment in OpenAI. So these employees have a huge financial interest in the company. And when they leave the company, Sam Altman says, I am going to take all of that money away from you, all of that equity in the company, unless you sign this document that says you can only say nice things about me and you can't ever tell anybody that you signed this document. He's basically using their money, their wealth, to force them into silence. And there's a term for this, is freaking outright illegal in the nuclear industry. If anybody in my former line of work ever tried to do something like this, they would be in handcuffs by the end of the day. This is outright illegal in the nuclear industry because this is a chilled working environment. This creates an environment where people don't feel free to raise safety concerns. Well, that's exactly the environment that Sam Altman has created. Now, the next day, Sam Altman took to X to deny any knowledge of these provisions, stating that this is on me and one of the few times I've been genuinely embarrassed running OpenAI. I did not know this was happening, and I should have. Altman said in the same post that they had never clawed back anyone's equity and did not intend to. But it turns out that that was all baloney, because the credibility of Altman's denial was called into question on May 22nd, when leaked documents appeared to show Sam Altman's signature, as well as the signatures of other senior executives, such as OpenAI's Chief Strategy Officer, Jason Kwan, and Chief Operating Officer, Brad Lightcap, on documents that explicitly authorized the provisions. So Sam Altman comes out with this heartfelt apology and says, oh, my bad, guys. I should have known. I had no idea this was going on. Oh, my God, I'm so embarrassed. That was a lie. Sam Altman knew. He personally signed the document that authorized those provisions. So here you have Sam Altman squashing anything resembling a safety culture and then lying about squashing it. Again, this is not a good guy. Then on May 20th, Scarlett Johansson criticizes OpenAI for imitating her voice without consent. When OpenAI demoed its latest model, GPT-40, which responds to speech in real time in a human-like voice, many were struck by how familiar one of the voices, Sky, sounded. Listeners thought Sky's voice was similar to that of Samantha, played by Johansson from the 2013 sci-fi film Her. A few days before GP-40's demo, Altman tweeted Her on his personal blog. He wrote that interacting with the model feels like AI from the movies, so it is clearly an attempt to copy Johansson's voice. On May 20th, Johansson shared in a statement saying that she was shocked, angered, and in disbelief that Altman would use a voice so similar to her own without her consent. She explained that Altman approached her several times trying to hire her to voice GPT-40, which she declines. The actor says she was approached again just 2 days before the release of the demo, asking her to reconsider. So here is Sam wanting Scarlett Johansson's voice. Scarlett Johansson says no. He takes it anyway. He copies it. Again, this is a guy who just sees something he wants, he takes it. He chills safety environments. He fires people for speaking badly about him. He threatens to take away their money if they disparage him. Forces them into silence about even talking about these agreements. On May 22nd, AI policy researcher Gretchen Kruger explains her reasons for resignation. Adding to the voices explaining their reasons for resignation on May 22nd, AI policy researcher Gretchen Kruger, who resigned on May 14th, said that OpenAI needs to do more to improve foundational things like decision-making processes, accountability, transparency, documentation, policy enforcement, the care with which we use our own technology, and mitigations for impacts on inequality, rights, and the environment. So she has more cultural misgivings about the way OpenAI is run by Sam Altman. On May 26th, the former board member accuses Sam Altman of lying. When OpenAI's board fired Altman last November, they offered a somewhat cryptic explanation of their decision, saying he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board and the broader OpenAI team. And after the more than 700 of OpenAI's roughly 770-person team threatened to follow Altman to Microsoft if Altman wasn't reinstated, he was brought back as CEO, and the two board members who called for his dismissal stepped down. Now, it turns out that was this story here. OpenAI director says board learned of ChatGPT launch on Twitter. This is Helen Toner, who was one of the former board members at OpenAI, who has now been replaced by either Larry Summers or this guy from the NSA. The board of directors at OpenAI found out from Twitter that Sam was taking ChatGPT public. Can you believe that? The CEO of the company didn't tell his bosses, the board of directors, that he was launching their product on November 30th. And the board of directors finds out from Twitter. Now, she would go on in this interview, which is out there. There's video of this interview. There's Helen Toner there saying that Sam was just outright a liar. That, you know, they use phrases like he wasn't consistently candid or forthcoming. He was lying to them. And in a lot of cases, he would just come up with BS excuses and gaslighting and, oh, no, that's not that big a deal. And then he would just go do whatever the hell he wanted. This is Sam Altman. WTF is he up to? But wait, there's more. On June 4th, 11 current and former employees signed a letter criticizing advanced AI companies such as OpenAI and Google's DeepMind for cultivating a reckless culture. On June 4th, 13 current and former employees of the advanced AI companies, 11 from OpenAI and 2 from Google DeepMind, published a letter decrying the lack of accountability in AI companies, calling for stronger whistleblower protections. The letter notes that AI companies have strong financial incentives to avoid effective oversight and that its authors do not believe that bespoke corporate structures are sufficient to address this. It goes on to argue that in the absence of effective government regulation, company employees are the only ones capable of holding these companies to account when they engage in risky behavior, and the ability of employees to do this is hampered by the widespread use of confidentiality agreements in the industry. One signatory of the letter wrote that I worry that the board will not be able to effectively control the for-profit subsidiary, and I worry that the for-profit subsidiary will not be able to effectively prioritize the mission when the incentive to maximize profit is so strong. Then on June 4th, former OpenAI safety researcher Leopold Aschenbrenner, I hope I said that right, says he was fired for raising safety concerns to OpenAI's board. Now this is getting even more serious. Now, not only are they creating a chilled working environment, but now they are retaliating, firing an employee who raises a safety concern. In an interview for the Dwarkesh podcast, former OpenAI safety researcher Leopold Aschenbrenner explained the events that led to his dismissal from the company and criticized the company in the process. He said he first received a formal warning for sharing an internal memo with OpenAI's board, his own board of directors, in which he criticized the security measures the company had taken to protect model weights and key algorithmic secrets from foreign actors as being insufficient. The action that ultimately led to his dismissal was, as Aschenbrenner claims, relatively innocuous. Per his account, he shared a document he'd written on safety that had been scrubbed of sensitive information with external researchers for feedback. Aschenbrenner says this was totally normal at OpenAI at the time. However, leadership at OpenAI felt that the document leaked confidential information pertaining to their plan to develop artificial generative intelligence by 2027 and 2028. Aschenbrenner alleges that this information was already in the public domain, and indeed, Altman told Time magazine a similar time frame during an interview in 2023. So OpenAI fired a guy for saying OpenAI was planning to achieve AGI by 27, 28, when Sam Altman had already publicly made the same statements. Oh, and that guy just happened to be raising safety concerns elsewhere with the company. So that is the lightning round from Time magazine. Now, guys, there's plenty more here. I just want to mention, for extra credit, WorldCoin. This is the thumbnail for my video that I did about Sam Altman's crypto, WorldCoin. If you're watching on YouTube, there is a link in the description down below to that video. I recommend you check that one out, because Sam Altman is also going around the world having people stick their faces in an orb so that their eyeballs can be scanned in exchange for a couple of credits of Sam Altman's stupid shitcoin. And, well, what's happening with that biometric data? Well, we get stories like OpenAI founders WorldCoin reportedly perpetuates black market for iris data. People's biometric scans of their eyeballs are already being sold on black markets. Now, these are predominantly people in poor developing countries that are having their eyes scanned, where WorldCoin is pumping this stuff out. And look, all around the world, there's this push for central bank digital currencies and for biometric data to be used as security. Like, even just today, there was a story out of the European Union that in order to shop online, you're not going to have to manually enter your credit card number anymore. You'll be scanning your thumbprint instead. Well, if biometric data is the keys to the money of the future, Sam Altman is going around the world collecting that, and it looks like they're already selling it on the black market, or somebody is selling it on the black market. And then we got this story. Portugal orders Sam Altman's WorldCoin to halt data collection. Apparently, European leaders are catching on to this thing because of what he's doing. And this article, when was this? This was in March of this year. And they talk about several instances of other countries that are doing this. UK privacy campaign group Big Brother Watch said WorldCoin's launch that there was a risk that biometric data could be hacked or exploited. Spain's data protection regulator issued a 3-month ban on WorldCoin in response to complaints. The Bavarian state regulator has said that its lead authority is investigating WorldCoin under the European Union's data protection rules. The CNPD suspension refers to the WorldCoin Foundation, a Cayman Islands entity described on its website as memberless, even though Sam Altman freaking controls it, and having no owners or shareholders. But the WorldCoin Foundation's website says it is the only member and director of a British Virgin Islands company called World Assets Ltd, which is responsible for issuing the WorldCoin tokens allocated to people who sign up. So countries all over the world are getting a little nervous about Sam Altman's little shitcoin there. And that's just his side project, guys. At the end of the day, he's hiring a former general, a former NSA head, to be in charge of safety. And that, look, I know we've been in the tinfoil hat the whole time here, guys, but it's the 2020s. The tinfoil hats have been right more than they've been wrong in this decade. All right. If you're not a conspiracy theorist by now, then you have not been paying attention this decade. All right. And I would just remind you that plagues created in labs, funded by governments all over the world, secret islands in the Caribbean where the powerful and the elite do things to children, and then the people who have that information are getting unalived in prison. Is it really so crazy to think that a former general, former head of the NSA, when given access to so much data for so many people, that maybe that might not be in the interests of the average person, considering all the wicked things that governments have done just in the last few months? Is it really so crazy to think that this might be a problem here? I don't know. But that's just my take. What do I know? I am just a rando, just a conspiracy nut, just a melon head. Thank you, Atomic Coyote. He says, heard some U.S. government contractors use iris scans for site entry. I bet the Chinese would love to get their hands on that data. I can neither confirm nor deny, nor do I have any idea if that's true or not, because I've never been a government contractor or scanned an ID, scanned biometric data. I have had to scan my handprint. So biometric data for security measures is not a new or unusual thing. That's actually pretty widespread. So it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know about the iris scan specifically, but iris is one of those unique things, much like fingerprints and biometric data. So yeah, I would say that is plausible, entirely plausible, Atomic Coyote.
When I worked at the NSA, I had to use a card, a code, and your thumbprint.
Card plus a personal code, or like a PIN, I guess is what you're saying, plus a thumbprint. Yeah, they take security very serious. And look, guys, the one last thing I said, I know I was very skeptical today, and some people probably say pretty alarmist. Again, I don't want to diminish this guy, Paul Nakasone, his service career or what he's done. All right. I mean, I have no personal issues with this guy. Just the fact that a former NSA director, and what you need to focus on when you're a director of an NSA, what your responsibilities are. All right. That is diametrically opposed to somebody whose job it might be to make sure governments do not use artificial intelligence toward nefarious ends. All right. This guy comes from a background where his priorities are the other thing. So, in my opinion, he is not the right fit for this role, not by a long shot. And it's not a personal attack against the general or his service record or his career. I'm sure he did many great things, and I'm sure he stood on the wall and held the line against a lot of people who would gladly have done me harm in his long career at the military. I don't want to diminish that, but the consequences of getting this wrong with everything they're telling us AI is going to be able to do in the not too distant future, the consequences of getting this wrong are way too big to take risks like that. All right, the markets are closed. Let's take one last trip through the indexes and see how we ended for the week, shall we? The S&P closed down. Wow, not even 1 point. Look at the green candle at the end there. A lot of buying into the close, not quite enough to take us positive for the day, but just barely negative, not even a single point to the downside for the S&P, closing at 54.33, a new record for the weekly close of the S&P 500. The Dow ended up closing down 58 points or 0.15%. Again, a little bit of buying there into the close. I see a little bit of a green candle there, not as much as the S&P. And the NASDAQ had a lot of buying into the close, ended up positive for the day, up 25, almost 26 points, 0.15% to the upside. And again, another all-time high weekly close for the NASDAQ. Number go up. The AI mania continues. Stuff just keeps getting more expensive, guys. The easy money is still flowing out there. And I just want to say thank you very much, Dan Hedin, who identifies as a conspiracy theorist. I too, occasionally dabble in the tinfoilist arts. Dan, he says, my pronouns are told you and so. Thank you for your hard work, Jack. Thanks for the laugh, Dan. I appreciate that, sir. And thank you for all of your support for the channel. I appreciate that very much. So, Mish, you come from a different background of me. You actually did serve, all right? So balance out my tinfoil hat here, if you will. I'm going to ask you to play devil's advocate for a second, all right? And guys, go easy on Mish. I'm asking him to play devil's advocate here. I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell me why a guy like General Nakasone might be a good fit for this. This isn't planned, by the way. I'm totally bombing this on Mish right now at the last minute. So I'm sorry.
That's fine. So you have to kind of understand what the NSA's they have rules just like we do. They are different. I got it, right? Patriot Act, FISA, there's all a little different, right? And they do have supercomputers. But they are very specific on what they can and cannot do. And they have this safety kind of, okay, we can't do that because it's against the law. And so they have to follow the rules very specifically. And I mean, it's always, you don't know what it is. But so as a good fit would be, we're going to make these rules and make sure we follow them. What the rules are, we don't know. And they're not going to be the rules that we like, but he's going to be able to follow those rules and make sure people follow those rules, because he was probably a 3-star general when he retired. And he was on the National Security Council. So there's very specific things of that they can't use information that they illegally collected. So
I'm trying to see how many stars did he have. It doesn't say the number of stars on his Wikipedia page. He did get a bronze star.
Typically, that's his inventory. Typically, it's a 3-star admiral or a 3-star general when they leave. They come in as a 1 or 2 star and they leave as a 3.
Okay. So
they're there for a long time. That's why he was there for what, 7 years, 5 years?
Yeah. 2016, I think they said they appointed him, and he just retired in February. So, he 2 presidents, right? Trump and Biden, he served under. So, the argument that he might be a political operative, I think that probably falls flat because he served for a decent amount of time under 2 presidents that are pretty freaking different from each other. So,
and the thing is once he gets in, he's untouchable.
As the director of the NSA.
Hmm?
So it's not like a politician can't fire him because, well, maybe the NSA guy was doing something involving the president, kind of like an immunity.
Be a very big. They're the ones that prepare a lot of these confidential briefs that the Congress gets. So there would have to be a pretty huge scandal for him to get fired. It's kind of like the head of the nuclear power in the Navy. Once he's in, he's in.
Okay. It's not a confirmation that's taken lightly. He was unanimously confirmed, I would add, when he ran. That was a very divisive Congress that every single senator confirmed him. I'm not sure if that's saying something good or bad about him. I'm not really sure. If Congress unanimously agrees to it, that's like pay raises for Congress, right? It's usually not a great thing for me when that happens.
NSA is one of those things that kind of happens behind the scenes, and they don't want it in the news.
Yep. Yeah, and the little bit of news coverage the NSA got in the last decade certainly was not favorable for the organization.
Have you ever been to the NSA?
No, but I'm pretty sure they've been to my house, at
So
least virtually.
it's this nondescript building on this Army base in Maryland. You would never know what it was unless you knew what it was.
Just another one of those rectangles on a base somewhere, huh?
The recon Marine group that I worked for when I was at NSA, it was just, you'd walk up to the gate and not know what it was. You would never know.
I think they probably like it that way. Yeah. Less attention, the better in that industry. All right, guys. So let me know down in the comments. WTF is Sam Altman up to? I can tell you the one thing, a little bit of sound there, Mish. The one thing I would say to Sam Altman is keep practicing your evil laugh, Sam, and watch out for those meddling kids. That's the one thing I would close on. And everybody, I just want to say thank you guys so much for having your Friday afternoon with the Melon Heads here. Thank you, Mish, again for your service to the country, and thank you for your service as a moderator on this channel, along with Nan and M&J and Dan and everybody else. Thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you to my channel members and Patreon supporters. You guys rock. Links down below to all that good stuff. Don't forget to check out the WorldCoin video that is linked below on YouTube. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. Until next time, live small and dream big.